Hello and welcome to another Cinema 4D tutorial with Crash Bike Game and Animation Studios. Today I'm going to be showing you guys how to make a cool poly effects look kind of like this. I have to take you frame by frame because my QuickTime does not work very well. And I know that there's quite a few tutorials out there on poly effects, but it doesn't really go into depth on how to really set it up for final render as far as camera angles and such. So what we're going to start off with is obviously in Cinema 4D. I have to change it to standard really quick so that I can get MoGraph. And so speaking of MoGraph, click it and go to MoText. Now, give it a second really quick to load. There we go. So the difference between MoText and the spline version of text is that when you add text in spline mode, it's not 3D. You have to add extrude NURBS, and it's just adding MoText kind of takes that step out of it. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to line it to the middle just so that way it makes it easier on us for setting up cameras and things like that. And what we're going to do is we're going to go into our font and we're going to select the font that we want. I'm going to select that and I'm going to say tutorial. I have a feeling that's spelled wrong. Maybe not. Yeah, maybe not. We're going to add a camera really quick. And down here where it says position and rotation, just zero all of these out. You can press tab, it's quicker, but my arm is kind of blocked by my microphone. So, and then we're just going to hit apply, just so that it applies it. And then we're going to drag it out and make sure that it is aligned. Now, you want to put it out a little bit more because we're going to add caps to it. So I'll show you that right now. Sorry, I can't talk. So what we're going to do is I like to set it at 100. It looks a little big, but I think the more bold you go, the better. Okay. Now we're going to Control C, Control V, and we're just going to select that down, and we're going to put this at inner and this at outer. It's not really going to matter later on, but I like to do it just so that I can see what I'm doing now. So I'm going to set the depth to 75. I don't do the whole half thing because I don't think it looks very good. I'm going to put it right in the middle. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go into caps, cap, fillet cap, cap, fillet cap. And if you look in this view here, you can see that it looks pretty decent. Although, for both of them, the spacing needs to be adjusted. So what you're going to do is you're going to want to just drag and click in here, because if you get the Phong tags, and that's what you're going to have to be that's what you're going to have to deal with, and that's not what you want to deal with. So now we want to deal with the horizontal spacing. Now just increase that until you get something that you like, and then zoom out your camera again. But what I'm going to do right now is I'm actually going to change my render settings. So I'm going to go to film and video. I like to use 1080p only because I'm an HD junkie. So now clicking in and out with this little button here just makes it so that when it's white, you can actually see the view from the camera, and this is what's going to be seen basically from or in final render. And clicking out just brings you back to a perspective view. So now what we need to do in order to set up poly effects is first we have to add our materials first, because if we don't, it's going to be extremely hard to add them later. So you can make them whatever color you want. I'll make something that I haven't made before, so maybe like a purple. add a reflection. I like to use Fresnel, and I guess so does most of everybody who uses Cinema 4D. Don't know why. I like to change it to metal just because it makes it kind of a darker, and the more you increase that, the lighter it gets, but I kind of like to keep it a little bit of a darker color here. I don't really change too much of the settings. I mean, you can if you want to, but I don't really see a point in doing that. So that material's done. Now we're just gonna Control C, Control V it. Oh, okay, I guess that didn't work. So we're just gonna copy it, and we're going to paste it, creating a second one. And then we're just gonna go to color, and I'm going to switch this to a very dark gray. So I'm going to add this one to the outer part of the... Whoa. Okay, I know. I realize what happened. So let's try that again. I'm going to add it to the outer part and this to the inner part. And when you re-render, you'll realize that it looks extremely crappy. Am I right? The survey said. Correct. It looks extremely crappy. So this is where the more advanced things get in with poly effects. I like to use a sky, and what a sky does is it's not like a physical sky. A physical sky is meant for outdoor scenes. A sky is meant to put your own sky in. So I'm gonna click here, and I'm gonna add a material. Now I have HDRI packs that I can choose from. If you go to Google, you can choose from numerous amounts of HDRI and use them for this specific purpose. Some of these I haven't used before, and I don't really know how they would look. Like this one, I don't like these ones because these ones are make your composition come out kind of weird in my opinion. But find one that you think will suit it. I think that one would probably do its job. And when you're doing HDRI, you want to uncheck color and uncheck specular, and make sure that you're in the luminance tab, and that's to make sure that the brightness is fairly high. And add it to your sky, and what you're going to realize is that it added it to the sky. So everything that's supposed to be in this scene is actually in this scene. So you've got your lights and your background, your floor, all of your reflectiveness. And we don't really want that in our final render, so we're just going to right-click Cinema 4D tags and compositing. What the compositing tag allows us to do is make it unseen by the camera, so that, let's say we check it here. I don't want to spoil what the text is going to look like. So you can see that you can see the background here and what's supposed to be the light. Okay. And if we uncheck it now, if I'm going to go back up here, you don't see it. It's just completely black background, which we can change later, and I do plan on changing it. So now, what we're going to do is, with the text now completely done, we're going to select both of them, and we're going to make them editable. And now we're going to right-click, or I'll show you guys another way to do this if you don't want to. You can go to Mesh, Conversion. Oh, I guess it doesn't do that. Never mind. Just right-click and select Children. Right-click, Make Editable, or you could just hit that button again. Right-click, select Children, Connect and Delete. Now it's all just one object, and whoa, that was weird. And our materials are still intact. Now, here's where the surprising part. Ta-da! Our text looks so much better, and it's not because we made it editable. It's because of the HDRI, and HDRI is just basically a simple way of setting up a scene without having to make your own. I don't know, like soft boxes and light panels and things like that. It's just a lot easier. So I suggest, going on Google and finding HDRI packs. That's what I did to find the ones that I have. Now, our scene is still fairly in the baby stages. So what we need to do is we can go into MoGraph and we can add our poly effect. Okay? We're going to add it to our outer here. And we're going to also add an explosion effect. Okay? But we're going to just bring that way back. Now, okay. So what we're going to do now is we're going to click on our outer, make sure that it's checked. We're going to go to MoGraph, Effector, and where is it? Random. Okay. Now, this does not have to be a child of the outer. It can be its own entity, I believe, right? Yeah. Doesn't really, well, don't want that. Okay. So it's its own entity. Now, with poly effects, we have to make sure that we're in the effectors and drag that to random. And you can see that it already decides to jack around with our text, and we just really don't want that right now. So under the fall off, you want to put it to sphere. Okay, and you're going to see that we have it affecting our text as it goes by. So you could do something like that, but I feel like when you do that, I've rendered out a few and it just doesn't look right. So what we're going to do is I'm going to extend this out so that if we drag it over, it makes the entire text like dissolve, apparently. And yeah. So now that we have that set up, I'm realizing that we have to adjust the random effector because the random effector is not working very correctly. I mean, it's doing what we need it to do, but I think we can adjust these settings a bit more. Now, what the random effector does is it makes it so that the objects, when they are dispersed, they aren't congruent with each other. So we're going to make sure that position is checked and rotation. I'm going to hike up the rotation a little bit for all of these, only because I think it looks a little bit cooler once it starts to form itself, I suppose. And now we're going to drag up the position. You don't want to mess with these too much, because if you get too crazy with it, then it just decides that it wants to be totally ghetto. Alright, so now we have this here. Okay. Now, the way I did my other tutorial, or not tutorial, intro, is I had a camera set up here-ish, or more about here. And I had it kind of pan over in this direction. Now, if we render this right now, you can see that we're getting some pretty good reflections. But the lighting is completely unrealistic. So that's one problem with using sky objects, is sometimes the light doesn't work to what you need it to. So that's why we have to add in our own lights. So I'm going to add in a spotlight, and I'm going to drag it out here. And I'm going to drag it over and zoom out here a bit. Drag it up. And we are going to position this light so that it is shining bright like a diamond. Exactly. You guys are jealous. I don't know what is going on here. Okay. So what you guys have to realize is that lights aren't completely white. It has some sort of, I don't know, like tannish color to it. So no light is perfectly white. I'm going to bring down the intensity a little bit to about 81. I'm going to turn shadows to shadow map soft, and that should be pretty good. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to Control C, Control V, and under this light, I'm going to set the rotation to 0 for all of these, and I'm going to apply it. And then I'm just going to drag over here, and I'm going to re-rotate this so that it's pointing towards the text again. Alright, so now if we look at this, we can see the color has dramatically changed. The lighting is a bit more realistic, and we're getting shadows. The sky object does not cast shadows, so we're kind of artificially putting these in here. Now, you can do other cool effects, you know. I suppose you could put a normal light in the middle here and set this color to maybe like a blue. I don't know why I did that. Maybe to a blue, and set the opacity like really low, or the intensity, I suppose, and cast shadows. And we can see what this looks like. Yeah, it didn't do too much, but, you know, I guess it kind of sells some sort of effect. Don't know what kind of effect we're trying to sell here, but yeah. Now, in order to change the background color, what we're going to do is run out of background, obviously. And what you're going to notice is if you go to Edit and Project Settings, this is the color that it's going to come out as. It's the default for the background. Getting this really ugly gray-blue color. Maybe you like that. Maybe that's what you want to stick with. But unfortunately, I do not. I like to go to kind of like a bluish white. Just that way all the colors kind of contradict each other. There's more contrast, and you can see all the particles down here that you wouldn't really pay attention to, I suppose, but it sells the kind of deformed effect. Now I'm going to come out here and I'm going to click on my camera. I'm just going to drag it up a bit. Let's see if that did. Alright, yeah, that looks pretty good. So, looking pretty good. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to add, you know, some cameras in. And what I'm going to do, just give me a second here to think. Okay, so I'm going to add a camera right here. So when you add cameras, it automatically goes to your viewport, if you don't know that. I'm guessing you do, because if you're watching this tutorial, then I'm sure you know a thing or two. And the thing that I did to really sell the effect too was I used depth of field. And before we get too far, before I forget, we need to go into our settings. We need to put an effect, depth of field, and you can leave all those the same. It really doesn't matter. So with this depth of field, the rear depth of field is anything that is past this point here is going to be blurred. So we're going to drag this in because we want more than what we had blurred out. So if we render this, let's see how this comes out. So we get a really cool blur in the background there. And if you want to take it a step farther, you can increase or decrease this further. Okay. And you could even add a front blur. So let's see here. How is this going to look? Let's see. I don't know what the focal point of this one is, but oh, I didn't even add it. Okay, hold on. Let me see what's going on here. Okay, I'm guessing that is the point. That is the front blur. So this point here, anything in front of this point here is going to be blurred as well. So let's see what this is going to look like. I'm kind of curious. I rarely use both. I've only experimented with it. So this will be another experiment. So I guess that could kind of be a cool effect, but I'm going to leave it off for right now because I'm really digging what's going on back here. So this is going to be our first camera. So let's just go ahead and animate this. This is going to be about 300 frames, which is about 10 seconds. 10-second intro is fairly long, so just bear with me. Render time is going to be killer, just to let you know. So on frame 1, we're going to auto key. And let's say I want it to take 2 seconds. And I want it to go that way. And I want it to kind of pan over in this direction about here. So now we can just kind of watch this. And this is pretty much what it's going to do. I don't think that is in real time. But, you get a pretty general idea of what's happening. Maybe you don't even want it to be 10 seconds. You can do shorter versions of it as well. So you could even leave it at that if you wanted to, but, I don't know. Maybe you want more of a cinematic type of feel to it. So what we can do is we can actually come into here, okay, and we can actually do kind of like a fly through of these parts here. So I'm going to add a camera about here, okay, and then at frame 61 I'm going to add a keyframe, and then at frame, let's see, so that took 2 seconds, 120, frame 120, because that'll be 4 seconds. I'm going to move this camera through this particle area here to about, here maybe. Oh, I'm not even in that camera. I guess it does kind of help to be in the camera. And then I'm just going to move through these particles. So let's see what our animation looks like so far. So we've got our first camera panning across that way. Then we have this one moving in through the particles. And then finally we'll just stop with this camera here, our first camera that we made. And what we can do is after frame 120, I'm going to go to frame 121. I'm going to go to actually the random effector, and I'm going to keyframe it, and another 30 frames, so be 150. So at frame 150, I'm going to take actually, you know what, I'm going to go to frame 121 again. I'm going to keyframe all of these. You can keyframe these individually by holding control and then going back to 150. And I'm going to set these all to 0. Apologize if you can hear my mouse double click. Okay. Now, what you're probably thinking to yourself is, well, okay, that's all well and good, but now the problem is how are the cameras going to be tracked? Well, I have a simple explanation for this, but first let's watch this animation. So we got our camera panning over, we got our second camera panning over, then it's just going to go straight to our other camera, and then the text forms. Okay, that's pretty good. So now what we need to do in order to make all of this fluent is add a stage. I have a tutorial on how to do stages already, so I'm going to kind of just hurry up through this. I'll give you some pointers though. So what we want to do is we want to take our camera that first moves, okay, and we're going to add it here. Okay, I'm going to add keyframe. Now this goes to frame 60, so at 61, 60, I'm going to keyframe it, and then at 61, I'm going to add camera 2. It already keyframed it for me, so I don't have to. Then at frame 120, I'm going to keyframe it. Then at frame 121, I'm going to go back to our original camera here, and it keyframed it for me. So this is what our scene looks like. Yeah. And I forgot to do something to camera 2, so let's uncheck the stage there, or else you won't be able to get out of the camera. And what we're going to do is I'm actually going to set depth of field for this one too, rear depth of field, and I'm going to actually just bring this way back, like to there. So if I click camera 2, let's see how much of that is going to be blurred out. I like the particle fly-throughs. I think it's pretty cool. But let's see how much is blurred out, just so that we're not messing ourselves up here at the end. That's probably a little bit too much. I don't know. That's pretty cool. Alright, I'll just increase it a little bit. Right about there. How about that? I'm sorry if this tutorial is taking forever, but this is a very long process. You want to make sure that it gets pretty sexy. Oh my gosh, that looks delicious. Okay, I could just gobble it up all day. Alright, so with our little scene checked here, our stage, now if we play it back, this is what we see. Kind of like a swoosh over there, then a pan over here, and then sexy text forming right there. Okay, so then you can actually end this now at about frame 200, and instead of using 10 seconds of animation for a tutorial or for for an intro, you're using 1 second, 2 second, 3 second, 4 second. I don't know, about 5 seconds, I guess. 6 seconds, 7 seconds, about that. Well, this is the end of the tutorial part, so I'm going to render this out and put this at the end of the video so that you guys can see, maybe even at the beginning. At the end. Okay, something for you guys to look forward to. Thank you for watching.